Hi everyone and welcome to a special edition of Between Two Consultants for our friends at McKesson. I am Nicholas Kelly.
And I'm Ethan Silvers. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. And in this session, we want to talk a little bit about all the experience that we have at McKesson, as well as talking about specifically application integration and implementation. Now, we've also got a particular focus and emphasis on the user experience throughout that process and how to make it top notch. So to do that, if you're a friend of the show and you've been watching episodes up to date, you will have obviously met Ethan before, as well as you might recognize Kevin. But I'm going to ask for some quick introductions first. So Kevin, could you give us a brief introduction, please?
Sure. Kevin Mose, Managing Director at Logic 2020. Been with the company for 21 years and been working on various McKesson projects for nearly 20 years.
Awesome. And Ethan, I'll throw it over to you for the very unlikely event that people don't know who you are.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Nick. It would be very surprising. I'm up there with head of states in terms of recognizability, if that's a word. In terms of McKesson, I've been working with McKesson for over a decade, have done probably dozens of projects. And I am the client director for McKesson. Thanks, Nick.
Awesome. So between two of you, there's over 30 years of experience working with McKesson. So that's quite an accomplishment already. And I'm sure there's lots to share. But to frame that up first, Ethan, could you kick us off with giving us an overview of the type of work that we've been doing over the years at the organization, as well as feel free to pass it over to Kevin for filling in any of the gaps there.
Yeah, I can't imagine there will be any gaps, but thank you for that, Nick. So at McKesson, a lot of the things that we have really focused on is around technology projects where we're implementing new systems, tools, softwares, integrating, migrating from whatever existed before, from whatever we are replacing. And the things that we have really, really focused on is working with the technology and business teams to make sure that what we are putting in is very usable and is providing as optimal an experience as possible within the environment that exists. I would love it, Kevin, you have double the experience that I have. And I know we've worked on some interesting projects. Do you want to talk about one or two of them?
Sure. One of the ones we did over the past few years was helping migrate onto a new platform for specialty. And this was helping to move to Salesforce, happened to be the platform, but it was moving off of Siebel and some other systems that had been around for decades. And I think some of the challenges there were the rules were so complex. It was very difficult to get that business logic out. And Ethan, to your point about working closely with the business and technology, it was critical to make sure we really understood all the depths of those complex rules in order to put them into the new system. As these are going for drugs going out to oncology patients, you can't afford to be wrong, right? At the end of the day, we migrated more than 60 different migrations just for Novartis alone. I think there are over 30 integrations. And from a results point of view, there were over 250,000 patients that we moved into Salesforce over this time, 100% clean. None of them were rejected. And that also included nearly 1 million different case notes. They were all loaded as well. So it was a very, very, very complex system over a couple of years. And one of the added benefits as well was this was initially for Novartis, then it went to Amgen, and it kind of kept going. So it was the ability to build foundational logic from the architecture point of view that could then be reused as you went forward. So new projects could be implemented in maybe half the time and half the cost.
That's brilliant, Kevin. So if you'll excuse the pun, it went viral because it was so successful. And that's one of the things we obviously want to focus on here is the outcomes are the so what. And you alluded to some of them there, the reduction in time. But are there other outcomes that that were measurable? Let's say that was a benefit from that project.
I think the biggest outcomes was having everything in one place. So before, data was in various different systems. So if you wanted to look up information on a patient record, you might be looking in multiple places. Data wasn't the cleanest. Addresses could be different in every system you looked. So having clean data that actually made sense across the board and the logic to then get get the drugs out to the patients on time without being concerned that it might go to the wrong address. When you talk about experience, at the end of the day, someone needs a medication when they need it. You can't wait for that. It reduced the time to market of new programs from months to weeks. Also, call center training time was reduced from weeks to days. Case management issues were reduced by nearly 80%. And just the maintenance costs were nearly halved. And on top of that, reporting was nearly 100% automated. So we could generate reports within hours of requests, whereas it would take weeks from before if it even happened.
Yeah, and I think it's a key point as well, if it even happens. All these missed opportunities that, like, we could say, yeah, we're getting time savings, but what if it doesn't happen at all? Kevin, thanks so much for that. And could you give us a sense of what length of time that took? What was the duration of that project?
The project went on for about 3 years. The first implementation was about 18 months. And then every 3 to 6 months after that, there was another added implementation, whether it was a new drug, new company, something new went in over that 3-year period.
Brilliant. Ethan, is there anything you want to add to that project, or do you want to introduce another project that we did?
I'll do both. So what I find remarkable, and Kevin was closely involved during different stints of that, and part of what's remarkable is Kevin took like a very hands-on approach while he was managing a ton of other things. In addition is, it was 18 months to do that first one, which laid the groundwork, as Kevin was saying, so that the rest could be done in several month increments, which is a great feat. Thank you for that, Kevin. The project that I'd like to bring up, and there's a few, but we worked on the ordering center for specialty. And the reason why we were working on it was because the look and feel was outdated. And there was also, it wasn't intuitive. And it had been built a little while ago. And so there were folks who were using it now who had gotten accustomed to the new web. So folks were just using Amazon more. So internally, folks were becoming less and less comfortable as they onboarded new resources. So what we did is we worked very closely with the McKesson technology team so that we could revise and revamp the customer experience within that ordering. And I think what's important is that it wasn't just being used for ordering, it was also being used for things like reports and for finances. And so these customers who were using it were coming there on a very regular basis, and they were struggling, and then they were reverting to calling up the call center to place their orders, to get their reports printed out. And so we came in and we worked very closely with the client in terms of the technology that was being used and optimizing that experience. And what I'd like to point out is that what we really wanted to make sure is that what we put out there was something that the technology team could support on an ongoing basis. And that was very important. We really worked arm in arm with everybody, or hand in hand, to make that work. And so by the end of it, after it went live, that directly led to a fairly significant decrease in calls that were made to the call center to place orders. I want to say it was around 15 to 20%.
So of that 15 to 20%, is there like a number of hours per week you could throw a number at there where you think hours saved for folks?
Yeah, it was like across the board, it had to be dozens of hours, and probably easily getting into the triple digits. And also part of it is just like the error rates that are happening when you give a call to a call center and saying, hey, we need this many vials of this or this many milligrams of that, and folks have 25 different orders. It's very helpful in terms of just being more confident that when you're getting specialty drugs to the clinics, you need to get it right. And so there was more confidence in making that happen.
Awesome. So we've got time to just cover off one more. Ethan, you'd mentioned you had something, perhaps something outside of specialty as well, just to kind of give a flavor of the work we do in other areas.
Yeah, I was in pharma, and Kevin, you're my boss, and I feel like I am dominating this, so please forgive me. We did. I worked extensively in pharma on the customer contracting process and systems that were being used. And the reason why is this process had been around for a while, but everything is going through the customer contracting system. And so we helped move it from something that was very paper-based, and the technology, when it was being used, was not very effective. And so we spoke a lot with the folks who were using it for internal folks at McKesson in terms of understanding what systems needed to be used and how those systems would interact with each other. So between Salesforce and other systems that were being used, we looked to optimize it. And so the benefit is that we took it from something that was very paper-based to then something that was very much electronic, using the cloud, and created a great amount of transparency about where things were in the process, and so being able to nudge folks to keep things moving on.
So again, like a emphasis on the user experience aspects and just making life easier. And it's such an important, a lot of organizations can build tools and it's relatively straightforward to do these days. But the user experience being key to ensuring adoption, making sure people are doing things efficiently and optimally. Before we wrap up, folks, Kevin, is there anything you wanted to add, or any commentary there?
I was just going to add, Ethan mentioned the call center. What he may not be aware of is about 10 years before that, so about 15 years ago, we worked with the Service First Call Center, and the goal was to become differentiated services call center. And at the time, the call center agents were looking at screens and sometimes pulling up 3 or 4 different systems. And so think about trying to pull up the same information on a patient, or the same patient, in 4 different systems to try and find the information you wanted. Wasn't the best experience for a customer. So this was early on where we helped integrate systems, so that way the call center reps could just look at one system and have all the information there, right? And the net result of that was they were able to give better information, provide better service, and much more, provide service much more quickly to anyone calling in. So that was 10 years before maybe, Ethan, in the call center project you mentioned.
Yeah, and I mean that was 15 years ago, so I would have been 7 or 8 at that time. Yeah, so I just wouldn't have been aware.
Just learning the ropes of consulting at that age.
Yeah. I mean, I was really getting into technology at that point and learning the ins and outs of different things. Yeah. So, but yeah, Kevin, that's great. Thanks for sharing. I wasn't aware of that.
Awesome, folks. That brings us to the end, and really appreciate your time. And as you can see, all that years of experience that we've had, we've probably worked in some of your departments you're familiar with, maybe even your department. We'd be happy to have a conversation with you. Ethan, any closing thoughts before we wrap it up? McKesson's been a longtime client of us. We've worked across pharma, specialty, McKesson technology, RxTS, and we could go on and on. And so a lot of experience within all of that, and we'd be happy to have a conversation and see if there's a way to partner. Brilliant. And Kevin, thank you so much again for being on the show. I am Nicholas Kelly.
And I'm Ethan Silvers.
We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Bye.